My wedding was set for last week, but a phone call revealed my fiancé didn't want me, or our kids. Now, I'm building a life without him. My wedding was scheduled for last week, but I ran away the night before, so it never happened. I'm a 26-year-old woman. After 3 years of dating, I was engaged to my 26-year-old boyfriend for 6 months. Together, my now ex-fiancé and I had 2 kids. Twin boys who are 1 year old. My boyfriend was initially quite opposed to me having children, and the pregnancy wasn't planned. I was obstinate, though, and informed him that I would have them whether or not he agreed. I thought I could raise my children on my own, so I offered him the opportunity to leave and didn't even ask for child support. The time seemed appropriate for me, and I've always had a strong mother instinct. I was prepared to become a mother. He initially objected, attempting to convince me to end the pregnancy. I made it plain that I would end our relationship if he persisted in pressing me. It was then that he appeared to change his mind. He was a supportive spouse during the pregnancy, and a good parent to our sons when they were born. I'll admit that I might not have been able to handle it alone, and we hadn't anticipated twins. I considered myself fortunate that he stayed. I accepted his proposal 6 months after the birth of our sons. It seemed as though he had never previously objected to the pregnancy. I was ready to forgive and go on because he had been so lovely and encouraging. After 3 years of dating and the birth of our first child, it seemed appropriate to tie the knot. We spent months organizing the wedding, and I was truly delighted. My parents, who really liked my ex-fiancé, were also overjoyed. He appeared to be the ideal man. However, everything fell apart the night before the wedding. I suppose it rescued me from what could have been a terrible marriage, but it's hard to imagine that one phone call could end a 3-year relationship. As is traditional, my ex-fiancé and I were staying apart the day before our wedding. He was at his family's house a few blocks away, and I was at our house. He called me after supper to let me know that he was eager to marry me and that he loved me. His remarks moved me to tears. I waited for him to hang up after we said our goodbyes and enjoyed a sweet moment on the phone. Regretfully, or luckily, maybe, he neglected to end the call. I believe that, contrary to his usual practice, he did not press the screen firmly enough. I chose to listen in on their chat because I was curious and could hear his father's voice, so I stayed on the line. He was recently asked by his father if he had been speaking to me. My ex sounded glum and aloof when he responded to his father. I knew right away that something wasn't right. Even though a week has gone by, the events that followed are constantly replayed in my mind. He replied in the affirmative when his father inquired if he still felt the same as he had 2 days prior. His mother then entered the discussion and advised him to proceed with the wedding regardless of his feelings. My boyfriend appeared to lose his temper a bit and told his parents that they couldn't treat him this way and that he would do whatever he pleased. In response, his father said that although they couldn't make him marry someone he didn't love, they could remove him from their family, therefore it was up to him to decide. Then his mother spoke up, telling him that he had to mature and become responsible now that he was a father. She said that although it was already terrible that he had children before marriage, he could still turn things around by getting married rather than delaying it because he didn't feel ready. She believed that if he was prepared to have children, he was also prepared to commit to marriage. His dad felt the same way she did. My ex started to object, claiming that it was unfair that he was being forced to wed me merely to avoid being kicked out of their relationship. He bemoaned how no one in his life appeared to care if he was prepared for milestones or not, and he accused them of being unjust. He claimed that he always had to deal with situations for which he was unprepared. He complained that his parents, who had made him stay with me in spite of his anxieties about becoming a dad, and I didn't give a damn about whether he was ready to be a father. Even though he still didn't feel ready, they were now pressuring him to be married. He persisted in griping about how unfair he was being treated by everyone. After that, I believe he left his phone in the room and rushed out. When I eventually hung up, his parents were still talking about how careless their son was. I was dumbfounded and unsure of what to do. Only after his parents threatened to divorce him against their will did my boyfriend agree to marry me and live with me. I certainly did not anticipate finding out about this the evening before our wedding. I sat in shock for the next 5 minutes. His actions had not shown that he wasn't prepared. He had always been a good parent and boyfriend, even though we had a fight when I told him I was expecting. I was unaware that these were his actual emotions. There's no denying that he was a brilliant performer. I made the decision to flee as soon as I was able to gather myself. I was lucky to have my children with me. A little out of town, I got into my car and drove to a hotel. By the time I got there, it was late, and my children were being grumpy. Without providing an explanation, I blocked my partner and his family after putting them to sleep. That was it. Knowing that the previous year had been nothing more than a massive lie, I sobbed all night long. Around 4 a.m., I finally dozed off. My ex's parents had paid for the wedding location and all other expenses. I didn't care about the money being spent because they were affluent. After all, they had come up with the entire notion. The three of them could handle the fallout. I texted all of my friends and family to let them know that the wedding was off and that I would explain everything tonight before I went to bed. I didn't give any more information. I told everyone not to respond to any messages from my ex or his family, nor should they go near them. I knew my people would follow my instructions without question because I trusted them. I ate my feelings and played with my sons, who were the only people I wanted around me at the time, at the hotel on the day I was meant to get married. Even though I was heartbroken and devastated, I had to put up a brave front for their benefit, and I did just that. I made the decision to return home after taking a day off in order to get my belongings and leave the house. I had already dropped my children off at my parents' house. A day later, I eventually made it to the house, and my ex's reaction was precisely what I had anticipated. I'm still not sure how much of his panicked, worried appearance was real and how much was an act. He appeared to have lost sleep. He said he had been quite concerned about me and asked me where I had been. He went on a tirade about how he and his family had waited for hours on the wedding day without waiting for me to answer. He claimed that I owed them an explanation and a public apology because of what I did, which was unacceptable. Cold feet was no justification, he said, for degrading him and his family in this manner. I said very little. I only informed him that I had just overheard him talking to his folks. For a few seconds, he appeared perplexed, but when he understood what I was talking about, he had the good sense to appear embarrassed. After that, I didn't bother to speak with him or provide any more explanation. He waited outside in the yard while I entered the house. Without saying another word, I gathered my necessities and departed. To be honest, I didn't know what to say to him. I was doing what I believed to be right, and he was doing what he believed to be right. I had lost interest in being a wife. Being a good mother was all I wanted. We hadn't spoken since that nearly a week ago. I believed it to be our demise. I had run out of things to say to him, and he appeared to agree. Or so I believed. He arrived at my parents' house a few hours ago and begged to talk to me. My parents and all of my close friends were aware of what had transpired at this point. Despite my parents' skepticism, I consented to have one final conversation with him. Since the babies had just gone to sleep, I didn't want us fighting or screaming and waking them up, so I didn't let him in. We conversed in the front yard instead. Even though he doesn't feel ready to marry me just yet, he told me he genuinely loves me and apologized for everything he had done to me. He added that he still wants to be a part of our lives and that he loves the children in spite of what he said that evening. I was at a loss for words. Since he had been deceiving me and being phony for about a year, I wasn't sure whether I could trust him again. I was skeptical, of course. Nevertheless, I promised him I would consider my options. He stated that instead of ending things, he wants to try to make things better and give us another chance, free from his parents' meddling. To be honest, I have no idea how to respond to that. Even though I want my children to grow up with their father, I simply cannot trust him at this time. Personally, I could really use a vacation because this week has been really hectic. What if I choose not to give our relationship another chance? That's what I'm left wondering. First update, hello everyone, I realize it has been a long, but I haven't had time to update you because I've been so busy with work, kids, and moving out. I'm incredibly appreciative of all the love and guidance I've received, and the support has been tremendous. It has been tremendously beneficial throughout this difficult period. Yes, I have discussed custody arrangements with a lawyer. I've made the decision not to reconcile with my ex, thus I want exclusive custody of my children. It was absurd and judgmental of some people to send me harsh texts, calling me a selfish mother for even thinking about getting back together with him. In addition to being a mother, I'm a human. Only a week had passed since that phone conversation, and naturally, I still hadn't moved on. After all, it had been a 3-year relationship. I thought about giving him another chance for a moment, but I was emotional because I truly did love him. But today, I feel a lot more stable. I understand that regardless of how I feel about the circumstance, I must prioritize my children and myself. There is no way to get back together with him. All of that hatred and condemnation wasn't necessary in the first place, but I should have anticipated it given that this is the internet. 2 days after calling off the wedding, I began searching for a lawyer. Finding someone I completely trusted and felt at ease with took some time. Because we never imagined this day would arrive, my ex and I had never talked about custody arrangements. I must now take legal action to make sure that no one can take my children away from me. I'm not sure about his parents, but I don't think my ex would even want custody. Given how traditional and conservative they are, I have no doubt that they would be upset if their son were denied custody of their grandchildren. I'm getting ready for any pushback they may give me. My ex and I haven't communicated since our last conversation, which was 3 days ago. This demonstrates to me that his statements about wishing to resolve the conflict were untrue and pointless. He hasn't followed up on me, even though he should have if he really wanted to make things work. I'm certain that not pursuing him again is the right course of action. I won't be with a man who doesn't sincerely want to be with me, and there is no trust left between us. It's great this way. The last thing I need on my plate right now is for him to become upset over the custody arrangement, so I'm going to let him know my decision shortly and hope he doesn't. Second update. Finally, I told my ex that I didn't want to reunite with him and that, just to let him know, I would be requesting full custody. I thought he would be okay with it. He should have been appreciative that I wasn't pressuring him into something for which he wasn't ready because, after all, he acknowledged that he wasn't ready for marriage or children. He didn't, however, take it well. He began to argue with me, claiming that I was unable to harm him in this way. He said that although I could end our relationship if I so desired, I couldn't take his children away from him. Now, if our relationship had been normal, that would have made sense, but it isn't. My ex didn't want children in the first place, as you are fully aware. He wasn't prepared to become a parent until a week ago, but all of a sudden he was battling for custody of the children. I was certain that something was wrong and that his parents were probably still attempting to manipulate him. We were at a restaurant, and I was feeling really ashamed about the commotion he was creating, so I tried to calm him down as he was panicked throughout our argument. He eventually became a little more composed after some time. I couldn't afford a protracted custody dispute, so I made the decision to try to talk sense into his head. I lacked the funds and motivation to do it. Additionally, I was aware that his parents could hire the top attorneys, so even if I had the moral superiority, they might prolong the proceedings. Reasoning with him and hoping he wouldn't argue with me was my best course of action. I informed him that until a week ago, he had been claiming he wasn't prepared for children. I clarified that this was the best course of action for everyone. He could live his life as he pleased, free from the burdens of marriage and children, and I would take care of the children, which was what I wanted anyhow. It seemed like the only sensible course of action because I believed it was what he also wanted. He surprised me by telling me that he had changed his mind and felt prepared to become a father. It simply did not stack up. His declaration that he was prepared just strengthened my thoughts that something more was going on. He couldn't have abruptly changed his mind in a week if he hadn't felt prepared to become a father for a full year. He eventually told me the truth when I asked him if there was anything he wasn't telling me. His parents were responsible. Surprise, surprise. He had gone to his parents after I informed him I knew everything and the wedding was put off. They instructed him to swiftly put me straight. He came up to me a week later for that reason. His parents claimed that although they had come to terms with the fact that I would not wed him because it was now beyond their control, they would not allow him to lose custody of their grandchildren. If he didn't persuade me to accept shared custody, they threatened to cut him off once more. He was virtually pleading with me to accept a joint custody agreement at this time. I simply left because I was so repulsed. It was unbelievable to me that he was dancing to his parents' music once more. I had given him a free pass, but he was still unable to make up his mind. He wanted his parents' money more than he wanted to commit to me or become a father. I didn't want him near our children if that was his only concern. They were worthy of better. I didn't want him in my life or my children's lives in any way, therefore I didn't even want child support. He was obviously lacking in moral character and would stop at nothing to maintain his parents' favor. It was pitiful. I blocked him everywhere once more in the days that have passed. I don't want to see or speak with him. In his final message to me, he suggested that we agree to share custody and that if his parents died, he would divide his inheritance with me. It's unbelievable that he's actually putting forward this absurdity for no other reason. I suppose this is my punishment for first falling for a pampered brat. I am a self-made lady who has risen through the ranks on my own. Although my parents did fund my education, we didn't have a lot of money. I had to work really hard for what I have now, since I had to rely on scholarships to pay for college. My ex is the only son of parents who are very well off. You all know the type, so I doubt I need to elaborate. When he started dating me, I felt he had changed, and he really convinced me that he had. However, I was mistaken. He fooled me for a good 3 years, which proves he's a brilliant actor. I don't want to stay to find out more now that I can finally see him for who he really is. I'm finished. I have no problem raising my children by myself. A parent who doesn't even want to be a father is no better than any other father. I'm positive now that I made the right choice. Instead of turning this into a protracted custody dispute, I just hope he realizes his mistake and revokes his parental rights. I will continue to pray. Third update. Hi everyone, I'm here to finally tell you all some wonderful news. Although I've been quite busy, I realize it's been a while since my last update. First things first, I now live in a much smaller apartment with my babies, but it's mine at least. This house is really mine, unlike the one my ex and I shared. My parents can occasionally visit to help with the kids because it's close to their place. Since I obviously can't stop working, I've also hired a full-time babysitter to help me. I am extremely fortunate to be able to purchase this at this time. I am quite appreciative of my parents' financial support as well. They're trying their hardest, but none of us anticipated this. I consider myself lucky to have parents that are so devoted and encouraging. Now for the section about my ex that I know most people are interested in. He gave up his parental rights by signing. My best assumption is that either his parents gave up or he eventually stood up to them. I'm not sure what changed. I assume it's the former because a friend told me he moved out of their residence. A few days ago, he expressed regret to me and even offered to reimburse me financially. However, I had no intention of accepting money from my former partner. I don't care that some of you may believe that was a bad choice. When I stated that I no longer wanted to interact with him, I wasn't joking. I forgive him, but that doesn't mean I have to pay him back. All I want to do is go on. Without his assistance, my parents and I are more than capable of parenting my children. I responded to his text by telling him everything was okay but requesting that he stop contacting me. He has so far respected that. Giving my children the greatest life possible is my top priority right now. I no longer have the time to be depressed or upset about my ex. The only thing that counts to me is being the greatest mother I can be for my kids.